Not all paths are straight. Some twist deep into the unknown. Hey, I'm Amanda Joy, and every Thursday, a new episode of Down the Crooked Path beckons. Paranormal stories, strange encounters, and folklore that lingers long after dark. So take a deep breath, grab your flashlight, or let the mysteries guide your steps. Down the Crooked Path, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Canadian Creepies is recorded on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. These lands and waters have been cared for since long before Canada existed, and they remain deeply important to Indigenous communities today. As we tell stories about darkness, injustice, and memory, I want to acknowledge the very real histories of colonization, violence, and erasure that Indigenous peoples continue to endure. A land acknowledgement can't undo that harm, but it is a reminder to keep listening, learning, and supporting in truth and reconciliation in meaningful ways. We share these stories not to forget, but to shine light, always with respect for peoples and nations whose land we live on. Canadian Creepies covers true crime, dark history, and disturbing events. Some episodes may include graphic descriptions or sensitive subject matter. We do our best to handle every story with care and respect for those affected. That said, we sometimes use humor and sarcasm as a way to process heavy content, never to disrespect victims, survivors, or their families. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Canadian Creepies, and I am your only host this episode, Valerie. I'll admit this is a format I have been avoiding since the podcast started because sometimes when I am left alone, unchecked with my thoughts, I can go a little rogue. But I decided, hey, we're gonna do it. We're gonna go for it. We're going to try a solo episode closer to the end of season 2. So as usual, we are going to start with our housekeeping. Something I'm really excited to talk about, and I've been saying for the last few episodes, and something I'm not posting on social media yet, because I kind of want it to be like a little Easter egg for listeners first. If you are an artist and you listen to Canadian Creepies, and now artist, the term artist is subjective here. So if you have a small business, if you create anything of the like, and you listen to Canadian Creepies, I want to collaborate with you on some merch, but in a way that actually supports you. So you'd sell everything through your own shop, your Etsy, your Shopify, whatever you already use, and we'd just be adding a new piece together. So you stay fully in control of your work. You're just making something for us, basically. Every sale, you keep the majority of the profit, and I take a smaller commission through a code or a link. And you'll also get your own discount code to offer listeners, which helps drive traffic directly to your shop. And I'll be promoting you, not just the merch, across Canadian Creepy socials and here on the podcast. On top of that, part of what I make is going to be donated to Niagara Reproductive Justice and pay your rent. So it's ethical, it's collaborative, and it actually pays artists or creators. And if you're hearing this, you're kind of getting first dibs. So reach out. I would genuinely love to work with you. And another thing I didn't think I was going to have to say today, because from our first round, I shouldn't say sold out. From our first round, we gave our packs away so quickly that I didn't think I was going to have to make this announcement today, but I'm going to make it because we do have more. And I think it will be something we will be able to continually have. And that's a huge thanks to Christine for organizing that. Actually, I had written a quick update on our wildflower seed giveaway. Every single packet has been claimed, and we're working on getting more, and we got more. So like I said, the free seeds went fast, creepy cuties, but we're officially restocked. We want to take a moment to shout out the Ottawa Wildflower Seed Library, an incredible community project helping people grow native plants, support pollinators, and bring more wild spaces back to our communities. If you love what we're doing with our Canadian Creepy's wildflower seeds, then you'll definitely want to check them out. They're doing amazing work to make native seeds more accessible and to help create healthier habitats for bees, butterflies, and other important pollinators. Our seed packs are available again, so if you missed out the first time around, now's your chance to grab one and help grow something beautiful. Happy planting, creeps. And to claim them, you can message me, Radio Valerie, you can message any of the Canadian Creepies account, or you can message Christine, or you can message Amanda as well at Down the Crooked Path, and any one of us will get you your free seeds. You do have to live in Canada. We can't send seeds to other countries because that's just simply not allowed. You just can't do it. So this week episode has been conducted by Christine, as always. Thank you, Christine. We are going to be talking about, I have it sort of titled I didn't give it a real title yet. I have it as The Dark Knight Rises / Eaton Centre shootings. So I believe I'm about to tell you about how a Canadian survived one of those just to, unfortunately, perish in the other. So the references for this are Ontario's top court. The references are CBC News. What's this one? The Eaton Centre mass shooter denied parole. It's a video on YouTube. The Toronto Sun, Court of Appeal, the Globe and Mail, as well, CTV News, the Star, as well as RV Husbands 2017, RV Husbands 2019, Ontario Superior Court of Justice, Ontario Court of Appeals, the Denver Post, 7-20memorial.org, the Centennial, Colorado, and JessicaRedfield.com. So let's get into it. The food court fiasco, a very crowded, bad idea. It was a sunny Saturday in Toronto at the city's famous Eaton Centre, where people just wanted overpriced fries. On June 2nd, 2012, the Urban Eatery, which is the name of the Eaton Centre's food court, the basement food court, it was packed with roughly 10,000 people. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, teenagers on dates, tourists looking for deals, and shoppers trying to eat deep fried food in peace. The Eaton Centre isn't just a mall, it's the busiest shopping mall in North America, making it the worst possible venue for a spontaneous shootout. The shooter, Christopher Husbands, wasn't some random agent of chaos. He had a very specific shopping list. The targets were Ahmed Hassan and Nixon, I'm going to say it right, Nirmalandran. This wasn't their first meeting. Months earlier, Husbands had been lured to an apartment, tied up, and stabbed 36 times by a group that allegedly included Hassan and Nirmalandran. Nirmalandran. Yeah, I think I said it right. I'm probably putting an emphasis on a wrong syllable, and for that, I'm sorry. To fully understand the Eaton Centre shooting, you have to look at the incredibly grim origin story that took place in a Regent Park apartment 4 months prior. In February 2012, Christopher Husbands, who was 23 at the time, was lured to an apartment under the guise of a social hangout. Once inside, he was ambushed by a group of men. And this wasn't a quick scuffle, it was a prolonged ritualistic attack, which is horrible. Husbands was reportedly tied up with duct tape and then was stabbed 36 times across his body. The attackers didn't just want him dead, they wanted to send a message. And miraculously, Husbands survived the attack, but he didn't want to go to the police. Don't blame him. In the world they were navigating, snitching was a death sentence, so he carried the physical and mental scars back into the streets. The Crown and the defense painted two different pictures of why this happened. In the Crown's version, they argued it was a conflict between members of the same crew, Husbands, Hassan, and Nirmalandran. Yes, I said it right. I'm second-guessing myself. Were all allegedly associated with the Sick Thugs gang based out of Regent Park. The stabbing was an internal tax or punishment for some perceived slight of power or struggle. Perceived slight or power struggle. The defense focused on trauma. They argued that husbands lived in a state of constant paralyzing fear, otherwise known as PTSD, after the stabbing, and he started carrying a loaded handgun everywhere. Not to be a predator, but because he was convinced his friends were going to come back and finish the job. And carrying a weapon out in the open in Canada is wild. When husbands walked into the Eaton Centre on June 2nd, he wasn't hunting. He was reportedly there with a female friend to buy shoes. When he rounded the corner in the food court and saw Ahmed Hassan and Nixon near Melendren standing there, his brain didn't see shoppers. According to his lawyers, his brain saw the men who had duct taped him to a chair and tried to carve him up. Fearing for his life, he claimed he decided to shoot first. Oof, in an open shopping mall. That's a choice. That certainly is a choice. Let's talk about the 15 seconds of chaos that ensued. To understand the chaos of that afternoon, you have to look at the 15 seconds of terror where the food court transformed into a shooting gallery. At approximately 6:30 p.m., Christopher Husbands pulled a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and emptied his magazine, unloading 14 rounds into the lunchtime crowd. Husbands didn't just aim. Witnesses described a spray and pray motion as he fired toward his targets. In the concrete basement of the Eaton Centre, the gunshots were deafening. One witness described it as sounding like heavy wood hitting the floor before the screaming started. Thousands of people scrambled for the exits, crawling over chairs and each other. One pregnant woman was knocked over in the rush, leading to her going into labor right there on the mall floor. That's terrifying. That's absolutely, that's bananas. The shooting turned a typical Saturday lunch hour into a scene of absolute carnage. While there were over 10,000 people in the mall, the fallout was concentrated on a small group of people who just happened to be in the line of fire. Hassan, who was 24, was the first to fall, and he died right there on the floor of the urban eatery. His sisters later described him in the court as a quiet, caring man struggling against the media's gang member label to preserve the memory of the brother they knew. Nixon near Melendren, 22, was shot multiple times in the torso. He survived the initial shooting and was rushed to the hospital, where he fought for 9 days before passing away. His mother, Vignes Wary, gave a heart-wrenching statement about how Nixon was the family's caregiver, often taking his younger brothers to school and his father to medical appointments. The most harrowing story of the bystanders is that of a 13-year-old Connor Stevenson, who was at the mall with his mother and sister. Connor was hit in the head by a stray bullet. His mother, Joanne Finney, had to watch her son bleed out on the food court floor, while his sister Taylor tried to keep him awake by asking him basic math questions, like what's 2 + 2? Connor underwent 6 surgeries, including the removal of part of his skull, which was replaced with a permanent plastic plate. To this day, he suffers from chronic headaches and memory issues. His mother's impact statement was haunting. A hit to his head would likely mean certain death, and that's why I am afraid. 4 other people were hit by stray bullets or shrapnel, but 4 other people were hit by stray bullets or shrapnel, sustaining serious but non-life-threatening injuries. One woman was grazed by a bullet while sitting at a table nearby. While not physically injured that day, Jessica Ghawi, who used the pen name Jessica Redfield, is a central figure in this tragedy. She had just finished eating and walked out of the food court minutes before Husbands opened fire. She wrote a blog post that went viral after her death, titled Violent Incidents and My Perspective, where she reflected on how lucky she was and how every second of every day is a gift. Jessica Ghawi's story is often cited as one of the most tragic and statistically improbable events in modern history. A vivacious 24-year-old aspiring sports journalist known by her pen name Jessica Redfield, she had recently moved to Denver to pursue her dream of being a hockey broadcaster. Very cool, very Canadian. In June 2020, Wow. In June 2012, Jessica was visiting Toronto and went to the Eaton Centre for lunch. Wait, maybe she was American. She was maybe American. I'm gonna Google it. You. Yeah, you. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing. It's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare. Hey creeps, it's Valerie here. And if you're anything like us, you love capturing a moment, whether it's spooky, sweet, or somewhere delightfully in between. Let me introduce you to our go-to for stunning shots, darkroom photography based right here in the heart of the Niagara region. Mel, the brilliant eye behind the lens, is a lifestyle and creative photographer who brings a little bit of magic and maybe a touch of mystery to every session. She's got all her prices listed right on her website, super transparent, no tricks. And she runs killer seasonal specials around Mother's Day, Halloween, Christmas, and more. I'm telling you, her Halloween sessions, creepy perfection. So, if you're in the Niagara area and looking to capture memories that are hauntingly beautiful, hit up Mel at mel@darkroomphotography.ca or check out her work at www.darkroomphotography.ca. That's Darkroom Photography, where your memories come to life, even in the dark. Looking for your next obsession? The Creators Collective Podcasts is your gateway to the dark, the chilling, and the downright fascinating. We're a community of independent podcasts with one goal: to share the best in true crime, paranormal tales, folklore, and unexplained mysteries. Whether you crave cold cases that won't stay closed, haunted histories that refuse to be forgotten, or stories that make you sleep with the lights on, there's a show waiting for you in the collective. And when you join us, you're not just listening to one podcast. You're stepping into a world of creators who love this stuff as much as you do. Check out the Creators Collective today. Follow the link in our show notes to discover your next favorite podcast. We'll be waiting for you. Support reproductive justice in Niagara. Niagara Reproductive Justice is a grassroots collective based in the Niagara region of Ontario, working to increase visibility and access to sexual and reproductive health care. They support people seeking abortion and other essential care by offering transportation, financial assistance, logistical help, and emotional support. Here's how you can help. You can make a one-time donation. Send an e-transfer to niagarareproductivejustice@gmail.com. Your support helps cover costs like gas for volunteer drivers, overnight stays, childcare, and other urgent needs. You can also support monthly via Patreon. Join their Patreon and support the cause month to month. It's patreon.com/Niagara Reproductive Justice. And you can volunteer your time. NRJ is always looking for volunteers to help with driving, outreach, admin support, and community organizing. If you're looking to make a real impact in the Niagara region, this is a great place to start. Contact them via email or DM them on Instagram or Facebook to learn more. You can find them on Instagram at Niagara Reproductive Justice and on Facebook at Niagara Reproductive Justice. Help amplify access to reproductive care right here in our own backyard. Whether you donate, volunteer, or spread the word, you're a part of the movement. She is not Canadian. She was born in Detroit, but it still counts because this happened in Canada. So in June 2012, Jessica was visiting Toronto and went to the Eaton Centre for lunch. She originally planned to have sushi, but had a sudden funny feeling and opted for a quick burger instead. That split-second decision likely saved her life. She steps outside the mall just moments before Christopher Husbands opened fire in the exact spot she had been standing. Now, just a side note, I do listen to a podcast called The Dating Detectives. Shout out The Dating Detectives. And they use this term called femtuition. And I believe that is what Jessica felt. Just feminine intuition. In her account of the shooting, she describes the surreal transition from a peaceful afternoon to a war zone. She was standing outside on the sidewalk when she saw a man with a red beard, later identified as an off-duty nurse, running out of the mall looking beyond frantic. She heard the screams echoing from the glass atrium. At first, she thought it might be a celebrity sighting or a flash mob, but because flash mobs were huge in 2012. But the look of pure, if you don't know what a flash mob is, Google it. But the look of pure terror on people's faces told her otherwise. She described a physical reaction to the proximity of death, a coldness, and a realization that she had been standing exactly where the gunman opened fire only moments prior. The most famous and arguably most heartbreaking part of her account is how she processed her survival. She didn't view it as a lucky break, but as a warning. I was reminded that we don't know when, this is a quote from Jessica. I was reminded that we don't know when or where our time on earth will end. When we'll breathe our last breath. I say all of the things I want to be. I want to be a journalist. I realize that's not what I want to be. I want to be a better person. I am blessed for each second I am given. Just 7 weeks after surviving the Toronto shooting, Jessica went to a midnight premiere of The Dark Knight Rises at the Century 16 Theater in Aurora, Colorado on July 20th, 2012. About 20 minutes into the film, a gunman, known as James Holmes, set off tear gas canisters and began firing into the crowd with multiple weapons. Jessica was in the theater with her close friend, Benton Lowack. When the shooting started, they both dropped to the floor for cover. According to Lowack's testimony, Jessica was first shot in the leg. As he was trying to attend to her wound and calm her down, she was struck again, this time fatally in the head. Lowack, a trained EMT, realized immediately that she had passed and was forced to flee as the gunman continued his assault. And Jessica was one of 12 people killed that night. Her brother, Jordan Ghawi, became a prominent voice following the tragedy, using social media to provide real-time updates and advocating for people to remember the victims' names rather than the shooters. Her death sent shockwaves through the sports journalism community, particularly in the NHL world where she was well loved. Her parents later founded Survivors Empowered, and an organization dedicated to helping other families navigate the aftermath of mass violence. Jessica's story is often used to illustrate the chilling statistical anomaly of being caught in 2 mass shootings in such a short span of time. That is wild. To survive one, to die in another, in a different country, that's wild. While the Eaton Centre shooting was fueled by a very personal 36 stabs to the ego grudge, James Holmes, the Aurora shooter, was operating on a much more clinical, bizarre, and calculated wavelength. If Husbands was about street justice, Holmes was about human capital. According to Holmes' own notebooks, which he mailed to a psychiatrist just before the attack, his primary motivation was a warped philosophical concept called the human capital. Holmes believed that by killing people, he could claim the value of their lives for himself. In his mind, every person he killed increased his own self-worth. He didn't care who the victims were. He just wanted a high body count to maximize his assets. I mean, and this is a form of thinking that we haven't really discussed on this podcast, I think, about mass shooters. And I've never heard of this. Human capital. That's like to be so detached from life and the people in your community and who are around you to just commit to slaughter them needlessly is absolutely wild and just shows like a real issue that is happening. How are you that disconnected from people? Before he became the Joker, a moniker the media gave him, though he never actually identified as the character, Holmes was a high-achieving PhD student in neuroscience at the University of Colorado. Man, Colorado and those shooters, because that's where Columbine was as well. His life began to unravel when he started failing his oral exams. For a guy who tied his entire identity to being the smartest person in the room, academic failure was a death blow. As his academic career died, his homicidal ideation grew. And that is wild that, like, you didn't just pivot. Like, just do something else. You're still smart. You're just not as smart in that area that you wanted to be. Or study harder. Like, try harder. He stopped seeing a therapist and started stockpiling an arsenal. He chose the movie theater specifically because it was a soft target. Lots of people, dark room, limited exits. There's a common misconception that he shot up the theater because he was obsessed with Batman. The reality is, Holmes told psychiatrists that he chose the midnight premiere simply because it would be crowded. He dyed his hair orange, not to look like the Joker, who usually has green hair, but because he wanted to look conspicuous and unforgettable. He wore full tactical gear, gas mask, ballistic leggings, throat protector, not as a costume, but as a functional battle suit to ensure he survived long enough to kill as many people as possible. That's a lot of like planning. And investment. That's a lot of investment into your mass murder. The trial hinged on whether he was legally insane. The defense argued he was suffering from severe schizophrenia and was compelled by his delusions. The prosecution pointed to the extreme detail in his planning. He had mapped out the theater, timed his arrival, and even set up a complex series of booby traps in his apartment, including jars of napalm and tripwires. And these were designed to kill police and first responders while he was at the theater. So not only was he killing people at the theater, he was also killing the people to go, like, make sure he couldn't kill more people or to look into him. Ultimately, the jury decided that he was clearly mentally ill. He was sane enough but he was sane enough to know that what he was doing was legally and morally wrong. He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences plus 3,318 years without the possibility of parole. The court proceedings for the Eaton Centre shooting were essentially a legal marathon that spanned over a decade, involving 2 full trials, multiple appeals, and a landmark debate over the science of post-traumatic stress disorder. Trial 1, the jury selection. Blunder, 2014. The first trial for Christopher Husbands was a high-stakes legal drama that began in late 2014, 2 years after the shooting. It was supposed to be the final word on the tragedy, but instead it became a textbook example of how a technicality can unravel a massive judicial effort. The Crown went all in on first-degree murder. Their argument was simple. Husbands didn't just stumble upon his enemies. He saw them, followed them, and waited for the opportune moment to execute them. They painted him as a calculated assassin who brought a loaded gun to a crowded mall specifically to settle a score. The trial focused heavily on the immediate aftermath of the shooting to prove Husbands' intent. The prosecution emphasized that Husbands didn't just fire a single shot. He fired 14 times, hitting his primary targets multiple times. In their eyes, that wasn't panic, that was finishing the job. The then 15-year-old boy testified about the loud bang in the darkness that followed. Seeing a child on the stand with visible scarring and a plastic-plated skull had a profound emotional impact on the jury. As it would. Husband's girlfriend at the time testified that he was shaking and paranoid before the shooting, which the defense used to hint at his mental state, even though the full PTSD defense hadn't been fully fleshed out yet. In the first trial, the defense was in a much tighter corner than they were in the second. Since they hadn't yet fully leaned into the dissociative state medical defense that would later save them from the murder charges, their strategy was a mix of self-defense and provocation. Essentially, they tried to argue that Christopher Husbands wasn't a predator, but a terrified prey animal who snapped when he saw his hunters. The core of the defense was that Husbands didn't go to the Eaton Centre to kill. He went to buy shoes. And the defense argued that when Husbands saw Hassan and Nira Melendren, he genuinely believed that they were about to finish the job they had started 4 months earlier in the Regent Park apartment. They didn't deny he pulled the trigger. Instead, they argued he acted in self-defense. They claimed that in Husband's world, you don't wait for the guys who stabbed you 36 times to reach for their waistbands. You shoot first or you die. The Crown was trying to paint this as a gang war. The defense fought back by arguing that this was a personal dispute, not a corporate gang hit. By framing it as a personal vendetta born out of a near-death experience, they hoped to steer the jury away from the first degree or planned label. The court proceedings featured heartbreaking statements from those who survived and the families of those who didn't. Connor Stevenson, who was 13, he was shot in the head while shopping with his mother and sister. He described the moment as his head feeling funny before total darkness. He survived but required 1,200 stitches and 4 surgeries. His skull is now partially made of plastic. Amran Hassan, the sister of Ahmed, she wept on the stand, describing Ahmed as a baby brother who was loving and caring, refuting his media portrayal as just a gang member. Vigneswary Nirmarelendran, the mother of Nixon, spoke through an interpreter about her family's struggle as immigrants and her love for her son, stating, "Everyone will say my son was bad, but for me, he was not like that." Joanne Finney, Connor's mother, she spoke of the absolute terror that has never left her, asking the court, "How can I put my son in this situation?" regarding a simple trip to the mall. In December 2014, after days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder ×2. They didn't believe it was a planned and deliberate hit, first degree, but they did believe it was he intended to kill them the moment he saw them. He was also found guilty of aggravated assault and criminal negligence for the 5 bystanders who were shot or injured in the chaos. In April 2015, Justice Eugene Uschuk sentenced husbands to life in prison with no chance of parole for 30 years. The judge was famously blunt, calling husbands' actions cowardly and noting that he had turned a place of commerce into a killing field. And despite the guilty verdict, husband's legal team appealed. The entire trial was eventually declared a mistrial due to a jury selection error. In Ontario at the time, there were 2 different ways to screen jurors for bias. The defense requested a specific method, and the judge denied it, using a different one instead. The Ontario Court of Appeal ruled that the judge's refusal violated husband's right to a fair trial. And just like that, the 2014 verdict was deleted, and everyone had to go back to square one for a retrial in 2019. Now there's trial 2, the dissociative state defense in 2019. The second trial, which took place in 2019, was a complete departure from the first, with the premeditated assassin narrative largely dismantled. The courtroom turned into a medical and psychological battlefield. This time, the defense threw away the simple "he was scared" argument and upgraded to a sophisticated medical defense centered on post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative states. The lizard brain theory, they called forensic psychiatrists to argue that when husband saw the men who had stabbed him 36 times, his higher brain, the part that makes logical decisions, shut down. They claimed he had entered a dissociative state. In this state, he wasn't Christopher Husbands the shooter. He was a person experiencing a massive flashback where his body reacted automatically to a perceived death threat. They were not aiming for a verdict of not criminally responsible. If the jury believed his brain was medically incapable of forming intent, he could have been sent to a psychiatric hospital instead of a prison. The Crown had a much harder job this time. They had to prove that despite his trauma, Husbands knew exactly what he was doing. The Crown pointed to the security footage from the Urban Eatery, and they argued that Husband's movements were too precise for someone in a trance. He stood in a tactical stance, cleared a jam in his gun, and navigated the crowd efficiently. They highlighted his behavior after the shooting. He didn't stay there looking confused. He fled, hid the weapon, and tried to change his appearance. The Crown argued this showed consciousness of guilt. He knew he'd done something wrong and wanted to get away with it. They argued this wasn't a medical episode. It was a choice. He saw the men, decided he wanted revenge, and used his PTSD as a convenient get-out-of-jail-free card after the fact. And after days of deliberation, the jury landed on a compromise verdict that satisfied almost no one. Guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter instead of murder, the jury rejected the not criminally responsible insanity defense because they believed he was still legally responsible for his actions. However, they did believe that his PTSD was severe enough that he didn't have the specific intent to kill required for a murder conviction. By finding him guilty of manslaughter, the jury effectively ruled that the shooting was a result of an uncontrollable emotional mental explosion rather than a desire to commit murder. Even though he was only convicted of manslaughter by the judge, Justice Mary Lou Benado was not lenient. In 2020, she sentenced him to life in prison anyway. She ruled that while his intent might have been clouded by PTSD, the act of firing 14 rounds into a crowded mall was so egregious and dangerous to the public that it warranted the maximum possible penalty for manslaughter. In Canada, manslaughter can carry a life sentence if the circumstances are brutal enough. Husbands appealed the severity of the life sentence, arguing it was demonstrably unfit for a manslaughter charge. Even after the manslaughter verdict, the legal drama didn't stop. The final chapter of the Christopher husbands' legal saga shifted from how and why of the shooting to a high-level battle over how much of a person's mental health should discount the carnage they caused in public. Even after the jury downgraded his charges to manslaughter, the court decided that the urban eatery shouldn't have been a shooting range, regardless of husband's PTSD. In February of 2020, Justice Mary Lou Benado handed down a sentence that shocked many legal observers: life in prison. While life is a mandatory sentence for murder, it is the maximum and rarely used penalty for manslaughter. Usually, manslaughter gets you 8 to 12 years. And the judge ruled that the moral blameworthiness of husbands was off the charts. She noted that while his PTSD triggered the event, his choice to carry a loaded gun into the busiest mall in North America was a deliberate act of defiance against the law. Husbands and his legal team didn't take the life sentence sitting down. They appealed the sentence, leading to a final decision on February 28, 2024. The defense argued that the life sentence was demonstrably unfit because the jury had already acknowledged his mental illness, the PTSD and disassociation. They argued he should be treated as a victim of his own brain, not a monster. The Crown argued that manslaughter is a broad bucket, and the specific case was the absolute worst end of that bucket. They emphasized the 13-year-old victim with the plastic skull and the sheer volume of bullets fired. The Ontario Court of Appeal upheld the life sentence. They ruled that the trial judge didn't make an error. They agreed that protecting the public from someone who clears gun jams in a food court takes priority over a discount for mental health struggles. On February 28, 2024, the Ontario Court of Appeal upheld the life sentence, stating that the carnage he caused to the public space justified the maximum penalty. And now some final thoughts, and it starts with Christine's thoughts. Christine says, this story is disturbing on so many levels, but what I found while researching it horrified me further. Whether it's a bizarre case of curiosity or a total lack of better options, you really have to question the life choices of anyone swiping right on the available inmates section on the Canadian Prison Pen Pal Registry. Is it a thrill-seeking hobby, or are the options on the outside really that bleak? Even the website dedicated to hooking up convicts with the public has a "don't be an idiot" clause. If the site itself is telling you to Google the guy before you buy him a stamp, you might want to reconsider your dating pool. Looking sharp is Christopher Husbands, the Eaton Centre shooter who blamed PTSD for his killing 2 men and severely injuring a 13-year-old boy in a crowded food court in 2012. Husbands writes, I used to tell myself that I'll wait till I'm out to meet new people and make new friends, but since I'm past my parole dates, it doesn't look like I'm going anywhere fast. I'm over here working on the mind, body, and spirit as usual. You can't tell by the pic, but I'm 185 pounds, athletic and muscular. I work out daily, drink knowledge like water, and always looking for ways to reach bigger things. Christopher is just one of the many inmates on this site, and honestly, what possesses someone to think, I want to be a pen pal with a piece of shit human baffles me. Just be safe out there and don't date inmates. Those were Christine's final thoughts. I guess Christopher Husbands is on a dating website, which is horrifying and crazy. Christine also has made these wonderful. She's made our first bits of merch. They are books of little books of the dead, handmade things that. First one's on Robert Pickton. Second one's on Clifford Olson. They're going to have some little hints in there that hinting at future cases that we haven't even researched or covered yet that you might be able to guess at. So if you're interested in, they're all one of a kind as well. One of a kind, handmade. If you're interested in one of those, please reach out. Canadian Creepies researcher, me, Canadian Creepies, or Amanda as well. Now we're going to do Creep of the Week. This week's Creep of the Week goes to Constable Joshua Smith, who is a Windsor police officer who was demoted instead of fired. And he recently pled guilty to criminal harassment for making sexually explicit phone calls to a female coworker. Over a 2-week period, Smith used a blocked number to call a female colleague. While remaining silent, the victim could hear him breathing heavily and moaning as he performed a sex act. And then Smith pleaded guilty to a criminal harassment in the Ontario Court of Justice and received a conditional dischargement with 2 years of probation, allowing him to avoid a criminal record. And despite the Windsor Police Services arguing that Smith should be fired, a hearing officer demoted him from first class to third class constable for a 2-year period, resulting in a loss of approximately $60,000 in salary. The decision was made based on his guilty plea, remorse, and prospects for rehabilitation. And despite the Police Services Act penalty, Smith remains on suspension with pay pending the resolution of an unrelated criminal charge of uttering threats. And for that reason, he has earned Creep of the Week this week on Canadian Creepies. What an absolute gross weirdo. I remember that happening to my mom. And not even just my mom. Somebody was calling my house in high school. That was wild. I remember that. That just reminded me of that. That was crazy. I've been a victim of that. It's a weird thing. It's a really weird thing to have happened. Guys, don't call girls or anybody from a block number and touch yourself. It's not cool. It's not nice. Nobody likes that. It's weird and creepy. And not the cute creepy that we like here on Canadian Creepies. Well, that's the end of my first ever solo episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this, I'll do some more. If you hate it, don't tell me. And you can find me, Radio Valerie, anywhere on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Canadian Creepies, Instagram, also TikTok. Don't forget Radio Valerie on TikTok. You can find Amanda. She's Down the Crooked Path. I know she wasn't in this episode, but she still gets the advertising. Down the Crooked Path. What else? Send me an email, CanadianCreepiesPodcast@gmail.com, or Patreon.com/CanadianCreepies. And you can send me a voice note. I want to hear voice notes from you. Speakpipe.com/CanadianCreepies. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week, creeps. Don't let the bed creeps bite.